Hello and welcome to NNI Sports Freestyle. Today we're going to talk about the relevance of the Commonwealth Games. This morning, the Premier of Victoria, which is a state of Australia, announced that they would not be willing to host the Commonwealth Games because they just can't afford it, and they felt that the costs have really inflated. And now, for a 12-day event, it just makes no sense for them to host the Commonwealth Games. What does this mean? Is there any relevance of the Commonwealth Games? I'm joined by Sandeep Mishra and Sandeep Nagai, both battle tested journalists who both, I think, covered a lot of Commonwealth Games. Sandeep Nagai, if I can come to you first, how many Commonwealth Games have you covered?
Four,
Four.
not many.
Is that because you didn't think the games were important enough or
Well,
because
well,
you
for the
didn't want to?
organizations I worked with, I think they were low on priority. The priority goes to the Olympics and the Asian Games.
Okay. Sandeep Mishra, what do you think? You also covered around two or three Commonwealth Games?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to come back to Nagai. Nagai, one of the things that we've been hearing about the Commonwealth Games from the time of Delhi in 2010 is that there are too many cost overruns. There is no use of all the infrastructure that is built, and it the event no longer has any relevance. Do you agree?
Yes, it's very expensive to host the Commonwealth Games, and they have grown disproportionately out of size. So that part is right. Whether the erstwhile British Empire Games are still have an emotional part to play in attracting athletes, that's also now getting questionable. But I think the games will have to reinvent themselves.
Talking about reinvention, Sandeep Mishra, whenever sports journalists cover an event, one of the things is to see some records break, see some strong competition. Over the years, do you feel where the Commonwealth Games are concerned, especially where India is concerned, we go there because we can get some easy medals. Easy medals means athletes get easy jobs. Is it just that, or is there more to it even now?
No, honestly, if you really look at it from all the angles and whatever decisions have been taken from Victoria, if I just go back for a minute back to Victoria, I think probably a decision of this kind was coming. You could always feel it, even in the last Commonwealth Games and even before that. A very small example, India took, I think, around 101 medals in Delhi. We never surpassed that figure. And I'll just take a small example of relevance there. In the, I think it was the discus event where Krishna Punya, then uh, Harvant Kaur, and I think I'm forgetting the Seema Antal. All of the three were on the podium simply because the Australian world champion wasn't there. So the point I'm trying to make it is that it is relevant from Indian athletics, Indian sport at times, but maybe looking at largely at world sport, it's not that relevant anymore because in between you see so many other championships that get packed in. But my point going back to Victoria is very simple that I think countries, cities are now looking at prioritizing other things than just hosting a massively big, over budgeted, inflated games.
Sandeep Nakai, let's stay with Victoria. This particular decision, and for him to come up and say, I mean, basically badmouth the games and say that it's just a fiesta which is amounts to nothing. According to you, what is going to be the immediate impact of this on the games?
They'll struggle to find a host. They might still be able to convince some country to step in as a host, as they made Birmingham came stepped in as the host the last time. But the impact, I think, the part of the problem was Victoria itself. They wanted to host it them in four cities. They wanted to build four games villages. They wanted the entire state's infrastructure to be developed with the, based on the Commonwealth Games. So their budget gone out of shape, out of size. They had become too big to be hosted in this manner. And according to the CWG, they were adding sports without even consulting them properly. So the CWG, I mean the CWG Federation, the Commonwealth Games Federation, is also in a bind right now, because if they allocate the games with the fixed disciplines, the traditional disciplines, some of the countries don't want to host some of those game events. So from being the friendly games, after the team disciplines have been added in 1998, when the games were first held in Asia, to bring more competitive nature between nations and bring team events into the game. I think they've added too many events, and the problem is with so much sport being played around the year, the top athletes sometimes don't find the time, or they're not interested in coming to the Commonwealth Games.
So, big question, Nagai. Should we do away with the tournament?
No, I don't think it's gonna go away so soon. I think they're about to reach their centenary in 2030. But if the three big Commonwealth, first world Commonwealth nations, UK, Australia, and Canada, if they start pulling out of hosting the Commonwealth Games, there was a time they would not allow anybody else to host the Commonwealth Games when they were smaller. One after the other, the Commonwealth Games were held between these three or four countries. And now that other countries wanted to host them, of course, when India, in context of India, because the problems over budgeting, over spending related to the New Delhi Games, uh, it's becoming a question mark. But India would be an ideal country to step in. We have the infrastructure ready, but the Commonwealth Games have a bad name. So whether the political leadership will be willing to step in, of course, I think I see the Commonwealth Games Federation trying to convince India to host them in one city or the other. And many cities have a lot of infrastructure available. The problem is we do not like to upgrade the infrastructure and hold some of the sports in smaller um, spectator venues where the spectator might be just a few thousand. We want to have big, huge infrastructure built afresh for the games, and that is where the problem lies.
Sandeep, when in 2010 I had actually volunteered in Delhi just to see what it's like, just to see what the entire technical crew, etc., is like, and it was wonderful to see a lot of volunteers there, etc. But the games left a very bad taste in the mouth of everyone, from Suresh Kalmadi, from the corruption issues, and the sheen kind of went off the performance of India, or even what it meant. Is there still an overhang of that?
Yeah, it is. I think 2010 is not going to just slip away. It's going to be a part of Commonwealth history, which I don't think anybody in this country or even among the Commonwealth nations are really going to be proud about. But I just want to pick up a point that Nakai was just making, and I think it's very apt. Because the rumor that's going around and people conversations that you now hear about the Commonwealth Games since the decision was taken by Victoria is that who's going to put their hand up to host this. Now the only two countries that are being talked about, because Canada is out of hosting. Between UK and Australia, they have done the maximum. And I don't think, I mean, Nakai can correct me. I don't know when was the last, was it Edmonton, Nakai? If I'm correct, I don't know. But that was probably the last time Canada hosted the Commonwealth Games. But
Victoria,
going back,
Victoria, 1994.
okay. So I think that's two Commonwealth Games that were being hosted by Canada. But Canada is not in the hosting game at all. I don't think they look at games in the manner that Australia may, or England may, or even India for that matter. But with India and Malaysia being thrown up as possible contenders to probably now take on the mantle, I think it's a wrong decision if India takes it. And if India takes it, I'll go back again to the point that Nake was making, that spread the games among at least 8 to 10 cities. Don't make one city the entire venue. We have states, we have cities which are pockets for certain disciplines that are very good, whether it's track and field, whether it's hockey, or whether it's cricket. Cricket can be played anywhere and you still get a crowd. But for the lot of the other places, I mean, just imagine a Commonwealth Games, boxing and wrestling being held in Panipat or Sonipat for that matter, or even in small towns in Maharashtra, you'll get a huge crowd. I think that is the way to go. And one last point on this, that everybody now has to pick up a cost factor and ask the Commonwealth Games Federation that I'm going to put up 10 rupees. Do you want the games in 10 rupees, or you don't want it in 10 rupees? Because it's not going to go to 40 and 50. And you would also understand that there is never a single budget, whether it is Commonwealth, Asian Games, or Olympic Games, never has a single budget that has been allotted, has ever a game being held in that, because it has always gone like the one in Victoria, where from 2.6 billion it's now going over to 7 billion. 7 billion to host a Commonwealth Games, I think, is outlandish. It's ridiculous. I think it's not done at all in that sense.
Both of you have covered a lot of tournaments, whether it's the World Cups, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's the Commonwealth Games, Asian Games. What does a tournament of that magnitude bring to a city and to a country? Nakai, I'll start with you.
Well, the Olympics brings a lot of money, a lot of profit nowadays. It is no longer a deficit financing event because of the sponsorship and the money available. So, if you host the Olympics, you should be able to save money since 1984, and that is when Los Angeles showed to the world how the games can be profitable. But Commonwealth Games have had a fiscal legacy. Also, the Asian Games they have fiscal legacy. But yes,
But
they
Nakai,
build a lot
even
of pride. Bring
Beijing
a lot
at
of
the
pride.
end of the Olympics, there was a lot of conversation about how there were so many stadia which had been built, they were of no use. You had Doha for FIFA making sure that they were building these kind of venues that could be collapsible and could be used for everything, which for anything else later on. So if a mega event like Olympics cannot sustain this kind of infrastructure, then where would smaller events be able to do it?
Well, look at the Jakarta Asian Games 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, and they used the available infrastructure in one huge sports city center of the city sports complex, which were probably built for 1962 Asian Games. They held about 7 or 8 disciplines right there in the fields out there. So there are ways of well, Doha. When we look at Doha, obviously we look at the huge budgets, but in the 2006 the Asian Games, the Aspire Sports Academy hosted 6 or 7 disciplines. So they are part of the some of the events like Kabaddi. In India, with the Asian Games Kabaddi, we would expect a 30,000 stadium and that would be full. But the stadium there probably had a seating capacity of 1,500. So you have to look at holding games in small capacity venues. But the problem is not Commonwealth Games. Problem is not just that. Commonwealth does not fit in very well with the international schedule of it comes in the same year in the as the Asian Games for India, with all these national championships, all these world championships being held all over the world. It's very difficult for the top athletes to find time and space to compete in the Commonwealth Games. Some of the top athletes would rather go and compete in the world championship. See, there are disciplines in which world championships, instead of being held every 4 years, are now being held every year. So, in the beginning, what was the Olympics? The charm of the Olympics was 24 or 30 or 34 world championships being held at one city. And that's how they used to attract the top athletes. Commonwealth Games has been struggling to bring in the top athletes for a long time now, and that is why from the friendly games where they were only individual disciplines, they tried to bring in this from 1998. They brought an international consultancy firm which advised the Commonwealth Games Federation to change the course and bring in team events. But a few team events were fine. Now I think they're adding too many events. The host wants more and more events. When the Commonwealth Games were held in Delhi, we added tennis and we added archery, for example. Now, the top tennis players who were busy with the ATP circuit and the Grand Slams and the Davis Cup, they would never find time to come and compete in the Commonwealth Games. So, although Commonwealth has a rich legacy in terms of tennis, so there are problems. The Commonwealth Games Federation has tried to reduce the number of events, and they've also tried to give the option of this to the staging host nation and the city to choose the venues. But then that brings in controversy as well. You'll remember for 2022 when Birmingham wanted to drop shooting and archery, India raised a hue and cry that these are the medals where we win all the medals and we'll host them. And a lot of nonsense was thrown around. If COVID had not happened, India would probably in Delhi and Chandigarh hosted the archery and shooting championships. So these sort of problems have been cropping up. Now, who will find the money? Uh, I was discussing with a few sports administrators today, and one of them said, "Why not Gujarat, Gandhinagar, and Ahmedabad can together host the games. They've just held the national games, and we have enough venues. I think so. If the political leadership would be interested in, getting the a few brickbats, because from the legacy of the 2010 Commonwealth Games in Delhi, Singapore has the money, but they don't have the space. They don't have the place to build a Commonwealth Games village. I think the Games village will also be a legacy that will be done away soon by the Commonwealth Games. They will start putting up the athletes in hotels. So the need of building a Commonwealth Games village, and the atmosphere and the charm that the village brings, that will be lost forever. The CGF is going to struggle hard. They are going to surely find a venue. I'm sure they'll have to reduce their expectations a bit at some of the venues. But then comes to 2030, which is the 100th year of the and Hamilton, which wanted to host the games again and again. If you remember 2010, they went into a big bidding war with New Delhi. India won with great difficulty. And India had lost two previous bids to host the games. So the first world did not want the games to go away. And it was between New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and UK. They would host all the games. Only Jamaica had hosted Commonwealth Games outside of these four until New Delhi stepped in as the host. Of course, Kuala Lumpur stepped in as a host in 1998. Kuala Lumpur is again a venue, a probable venue the CGF will be looking at.
Sandeep, Nagai mentioned one Jamaica, and you have been talking about how Usain Bolt refused to go there, which brings me to the question about the level of competition at the Commonwealth Games. And the second part of this also is, I think Nagai is very keen that the Commonwealth Games should come to India. So
No,
do
no, no. I'm
you?
not keen. What I'm looking at is the national championships that we host, and we spend so much money on infrastructure, even at the national championships. Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune, Chennai. They have hosted huge. If you have hosted a successful SAF games, you can host a successful Commonwealth Games with the same infrastructure. But when you start adding events, etc., then that becomes a problem. Guwahati hosted a very successful South Asian Games, and the same venues they can host the Commonwealth Games. But the problem lies is when the CGF starts expecting upgradation of every venue, and the hosts want to do it, and they want to make a big impression by spending so much money on infrastructure, that the hosting part of it, the games conduct part of it, is a very very small budget.
True. Sandeep, would you respond to that on Bolt
Yeah,
especially?
absolutely. I think apart from that, also, the question that you put up is about the stars. Whether Usain Bolt thinks it's shit or whatever to come to the Commonwealth Games. I don't even know whether that quote is right or wrong, or whether it was really attributed to him. But he didn't come, that's the fact, and he ran a relay later on. If you really look at the World Championships in Eugene, they finished on 24th, and within 4 days, the Commonwealth Games started off. And then you had the 100-meter world champion Shelley Ann Fraser Price, who's such a big star, who's such an attraction because she can easily fill up 30,000 people. And I'm talking about, let's say, if she's running in Delhi, or she's running in Mumbai, or she's running in Bhubaneswar for that matter, because Bhubaneswar has suddenly become the talk of, everything needs to be
Bhubaneswar
there.
Stadium fill up in any case, no
Yeah,
matter
but
where.
then when Shelly Ann runs, it fills up faster, in that sense. But then she never ran in the Commonwealth Games, even though there was a 4 day gap. And let's say the track and field events are normally held at least a week later when the games begin. And she was there as a tourist. So the point that a lot of people do ask, and this comes once in 4 years, is that are the big stars really concerned about the Commonwealth Games? Or is it just to collect medals? Is it just something where Australia B team turns up, or the UK B team turns up? The world champions sit at home. They don't want to go there because it's number one. It's too much of a journey, and it's also right to believe today that the scheduling is so tight. But the other point that we were discussing, in fact, even before the show, was very simple, that you have Commonwealth weightlifting, you have Commonwealth wrestling, you have Commonwealth boxing. What is the need of the Commonwealth Games then? The point is that why are you not dividing this? If you're really looking at nurturing athletes, if you're really looking at nurturing sport, just divide that entire thing and ask a different country to host it. And I think they would. But again, a question crops up. Does anybody even remember that is a Commonwealth weightlifting that was held in Greater Noida? Anybody out here? And I really don't think so. None of the media even bothered covering it. So the question is it relevant or is it dead? I think a decision probably will take some time, but I do believe that the legacy is huge. You can't just wish Commonwealth Games away in that sense. But over a period of time, I think the people who collect the money, the guys who actually write the checks, are going to ask, is my check going in the right direction? Should I send it to the world championships in different sport? Should I send it to the Olympic movement? Should I give it to the World Cup cricket and the IPL and so much other stuff coming up? Or do I keep my money for a Commonwealth Games in which I know A and B teams are going to be there? India may come with their A team because this is where we win a lot of medals. And also, let's also believe that, not believe also, it's a fact that our athletes also need some competition at level, and this is a great place to get that. I think looking at all of this, there are question marks. Even in Australia, they are now raising question marks whether the Commonwealth Games should go on or not. Whether it will or whether it will not, I think that's probably going to be decided in the near future. But yes, there is a big question mark.
All right, we're going to leave this discussion here. If I can summarize it, A, we're still not sure where it's going to be held. B, the legacy is very strong. And so it's going to take a little while for the Commonwealth Games to perhaps go away. Three, the very important point that Nakai made, that we have a lot of venues, and instead of expecting one venue to host everything, if a lot of the smaller venues in countries like ours are used and utilized, maybe our athletes would be able to get some competition and some exposure. Sandeep
But
Nakai
my
and
one question, sorry, I just wanted
yes,
to
yes.
ask Nakai. Okay, Nakai, between India and Malaysia, where do you want to see the Commonwealth Games?
Well, any country which is willing to sign the checks, I think Malaysia will be what was a candidate not too long ago. But anyway, Singapore, Sri Lanka was a candidate not too long ago. They didn't win that bid, so mercifully. Otherwise, there would have been a problem again there. But I'm sure, given UK's or the Crown's position as the head of the Commonwealth, they would probably, if there's no host found for 2030, the centenary year, it will probably go to London. They have all the infrastructure from the Olympic Games. A lot of Commonwealth cities have the infrastructure available. It's just that they don't want to be tight-fisted and they want to splurge. Now, this budget that Victoria is talking about, I don't think either they did not estimate it properly. 2.5 billion Australian
Billion
dollars
Australian
in one
dollars.
year could not have gone to $7.5 billion. It's not so simple. They might have had ambitious programs, and then they realized that they could
Yeah,
not.
if you remember, even Birmingham 2022, our team went there. Even at that point, the budgets really shot up. You did have a good 200 million pounds extra that did come in. The reasons for it remain unclear, not sure. But I wanted to ask you, has it ever happened that the Commonwealth Games are held in two countries simultaneously?
No, no,
Like
no, no.
matches?
It's
No.
not even been held in two cities
Okay. So it's not
until
happened
now.
and there's no precedent.
Well, holding it in multiple cities also brings problems because of infrastructure required.
Right, right, right. All right, Sandeep Nakai and Sandeep Mishra, thank you very much. Let's see
Thank
where the
you.
games go, India, Malaysia, or elsewhere.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.